recorded live from the lobby of the Line Hotel in Adams Morgan, Washington, D.C. Full Service Radio is proudly supported and hosted by Simplecast, the easiest way for a podcast creator to publish and distribute audio on the internet. For more information, visit simplecast.com.
Welcome to Black Girl Missing, a podcast that covers stories of Black girls who were reported missing when they were under the age of 18. We are exercising caution and social distancing by recording for you from our homes in D.C., Philly, and the Jersey Shore. And this podcast is brought to you by Full Service Radio. Due to the sensitive and sometimes graphic nature of these cases, we advise listeners to use caution when listening. Black Girl Missing is supported in part by New Voices for Reproductive Justice. New Voices for Reproductive Justice is a social change organization dedicated to the health and well-being of Black women, femmes, and girls. I'm Asa.
I'm Feminisa Jones.
And I'm Nikki.
How y'all doing?
I'm all right.
I'm maintaining.
You maintaining?
Yeah.
I feel like that's the
Seasonal
vibe. I feel like there's a vibe that's kind of taking over. I just wanted to check in on y'all and see how it's going. I know we got work to do, but, you know, I love my sisters. I just want to check in, keep it real for the folks listening.
We love you too.
We doing what we do. All right.
We're gonna get through this.
Yeah, we're gonna do this. Like we're gonna be all right. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sisters gonna be all right.
Yeah.
That's what they told us, right? Okay, let's dive in. We open each show reviewing cases of girls who are currently missing that we call the Aisha Alert. We encourage you to pay close attention, check our social media, and help us help the families who are still seeking answers and long for their loved one's safe return. We'd like to note that we create these lists of currently missing Black girls in real time, so by the time the podcast episodes are released, there may have been some changes. We will have information on each case posted on our social media channels so that you can stay updated. Deja Biana Gibbons is a 17-year-old girl from Frederick, Maryland. She was last seen Sunday, April 5th in the 1300 block of Taney Avenue. She's 5'3", weighs 110 pounds, and has brown eyes and black hair. Anyone who knows where she is should contact Detective Sean McKinney at 240-578-5683. Janiyah Pierre is an 11-year-old girl from the Bronx, New York. She was last seen at her residence at 10 a.m. on April 3rd in Cambria Heights. She is approximately 5 feet tall and 100 pounds, with a thin build, dark brown eyes, and black hair. Anyone with information with regard to this missing girl is asked to call the NYPD Crime Stoppers hotline at 1-800-577-TIPS, which is 8477. Dejana Waters is a 14-year-old girl from Chicago, Illinois. She was last seen March 16th on the 6700 block of South Chaplin Avenue wearing a blue and gray jacket, a blue shirt, black pants, and cheetah print Nike Air Force One sneakers. She is a 5'5", 110 pounds with brown eyes, black hair, and has medium brown complexion. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Area Central Detectives at 312-747-8380. Nikki, I will toss it over to you.
Thank you. Today we are going to be talking about Georgia Lee Moses. This story is a roller coaster, and I didn't really expect it to be. I didn't really know where to start, so I'm just going to dive right in. Georgia Lee Moses had a very unusual upbringing wrought with poverty and unintentional neglect. Her mother, Ida, was developmentally disabled and had a mental health diagnosis that prevented her from actively caring for Georgia successfully. And as a result, Georgia was often tasked with caring for both her mother and her 7-year-old sister, who has remained unnamed in the news stories because of her age. And poverty existed so deeply in their lives that they often experienced homelessness on a regular basis, and they moved around the Santa Rosa, California area quite a bit. In the home, in addition to Georgia, her mother, and her sister, was her mother's companion. His name is Ed Pope. He is a registered sex offender and a convicted child molester. and he had multiple cases in the Sonoma County area for burglary, molestation, and lewd and lascivious acts with a child. So
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
We're pausing right on it. Go ahead.
Because you know what?
Yeah.
My first question is, did mom know?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Did
she
mom
did?
know? No, I'm not sure. I'm saying like
okay. I was about
that's
to
my
say.
question too.
Ooh,
Is I
okay.
Come
don't
on,
know.
Mom.
I don't know if she knew. And so he moved in with them sometime between 1991 and 1996, because when Georgia went missing, it was 1997. Now he was released from jail from his molestation case in 1991. So that leaves that's a good chunk of time for him to meet this woman and move in with her. It's not clear on how they met or when he came to be living with them. There's so many dark spots in this story that there are no answers for, because she's gone and her mother doesn't have the capability to answer some of those questions. It's quite a story. So hold tight.
Okay. We're going to let you rock with this and with minimal pauses.
You're definitely going to have more pauses, I promise
Oh,
you that. But yeah, it was unclear on how they came to be together. Some people say that was her boyfriend. Some people say that he just kind of gradually moved himself into her home because he had nowhere else to go. He has a lot of record of living in the general Santa Rosa area. There's Santa Rosa is sort of split up kind of by quadrants. And he could be found in any one of them at any given time. But Georgia Lee and her family generally stayed in the southwest area of Santa Rosa, which is called Roseland. Some people say that Ed took in Ida and her daughters, but neither Ida or Ed had jobs, so it was kind of unlikely for him to be their provider. So Georgia needed to care for her family, so it was common for her to leave the home and stay gone for days at a time. It was also normal for her to miss a lot of school. She was chronically truant. Some people speculated that Georgia Lee stayed away from the home so that she could stay away from Ed Pope. So my question there is it because he was inflicting harm on her?
Right.
Or was he just creepy?
Right.
Or, because we don't know if they knew his past or not.
Right.
We have no idea. And some people assume that Georgia Lee was engaged in sex work in some way. Oh. And that brings up a whole new facet because she was 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And what a lot of people who don't work in direct social services or law enforcement, what they may not understand is that there are children who are engaged in that type of lifestyle out of necessity.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a lot of times because they're falling through the cracks and they don't have any other option. And they are learning from what they see. Mm-hmm. This is what will work. This is what will get me what I need. Is it ideal? No, absolutely not. But they're doing the best that they can with the tools that they have, mm-hmm. which is why, as adults, we have to create a safety net for children.
Absolutely.
So months before her disappearance, Georgia Lee had actually notified the school district that she would be dropping out of middle school to take care of her mother. The roller coaster of the story.
Is this like a hand in a resignation letter? Like, I'm out.
Right.
I'm out, y'all.
It's been great.
Didn't know that was a thing that could
be
done.
And mind you, this is 1997.
Right. So that's what I was going to say. Like, I could see if it was in the 50s or something.
Right. Now,
yeah.
that
happened.
Georgia Lee is only a little bit younger than me. Oh, man. So I'm thinking back to what I was doing in 1997. And I really wasn't going to the front office and telling them anything.
That's when I graduated high school.
All right, let's show your age today.
Yeah, well, here we are.
But if
where I went to school, they wouldn't allow. Come on, I was at boarding school. They were clocking you every second of the day.
97. Right. I think I was in 8th grade, 7th or 8th grade in 97, and I can't imagine going to the office and saying, "All right, y'all, I'm not coming back no more." But
and that being it.
And then okay, well, we understand. Bye. That wasn't, that's not customary. It's just not customary anywhere. So I'm curious about how they let that happen.
Mm-hmm.
how they just said, okay, that's fine. The school wasn't alarmed, as she had previously been chronically truant, and they knew that she had troubles at home. They knew that her mother had some challenges and some disabilities. They knew all of this. CPS was aware that she came from a troubled home, but they didn't suspect any abuse, and they had no signs of abuse, no overt signs of abuse. So they never intervened. Dropping out of school isn't enough.
Right.
Call Kamala.
Go away.
I mean, hey, maybe she had a point.
Maybe she had a point.
Oh, God.
Maybe she had a point. So after dropping out of middle school, Georgia Lee began doing whatever she could in order to get what she needed for her mom and her sister more frequently. Whatever that meant she was doing, nobody really knows. But she didn't have a juvenile record. She had no reports of delinquent behavior. So it was assumed that she had been spending increased time with these men. Because if she's doing whatever she has to do, well, she's probably not stealing, because she would have got caught by now. She's probably not, selling drugs or anything like that, because again, she probably would have been caught by now. So the assumption is that she was probably spending time with men where it is more covert, and she is safe from the dangers of law enforcement catching her doing some sort of crime. Which is kind of, that's a backward way of thinking about it. But if you have a record, it means you're doing something outside because somebody probably saw you. Mm-hmm. So that's the best way that people are speculating about what she was doing during all this time, because she wasn't at school and she wasn't at home, but her mother and her sister were being provided for somehow. And it wasn't coming from Ed Pope because he didn't work. So we've talked about this in the past. When underage girls are in the company of adult men, the adult men are the people who are at fault all the time.
All the time.
Facts.
There is never going to be a time on this show where we say this girl was fast or that she was asking for it. None of that. We do not believe that. That is not how we move.
Absolutely not.
She's absolutely being groomed and victimized and abused, even if she does not see it from that perspective. Mm-hmm. Even if she thinks, I'm doing this because I want to. No, you're not. You don't know that because you're 12 and that frontal cortex is not done growing.
You can't figure out if you want corn pops or Cheerios at 12.
Right.
I see the struggle every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. You're not making these decisions on your own.
Mm-mm. Absolutely not. And that's when part of your psyche takes over, that you're on autopilot, really. You're just inside your own body existing. So as time kind of progressed, Georgia, she hadn't been to school in months at this point, and she was at a friend's house on the night of August 13th, 1997, when she received a page. Remember beepers?
Oh, I remember them.
She got a page, and she used her friend's phone to call the number back. And her friend said that it sounded like she was talking to a man, but she couldn't, confirm without a shadow of a doubt. She spoke for a little while on the phone and then told her friend she was going to go meet someone and that she'd be back later. Georgia was last seen alive around 10 p.m. on August 13th at a Jack in the Box near the intersection of Sebastopol Road and Dutton Avenue in Santa Rosa. It's a very busy intersection. There's an interstate that runs right through that intersection, and it's less than a mile from her reported home. They said she was wearing blue jeans, a white shirt, and a white windbreaker. Georgia was never heard from again, and she was never reported missing. Let me say that again. Georgia was never reported missing. No. And I know I said that she would often leave her home and stay gone for days at a time.
Mm-hmm. That's why.
But again, nobody reported her missing. Nobody was looking for her. Nobody.
Not even after like 10 days.
Right.
No.
Even her friend was just probably like, well, this is what she does.
Right. So her friend did say that she called her back a second time from what is thought to maybe be a car phone that belonged to the man she was with, mm-hmm. and said, I'm not coming back tonight. Like, don't wait up for me. I'm not coming back for quite a while. Okay. So she did leave with someone. She didn't just walk off on her own.
Okay.
Georgia's body was found by a Caltrans employee on the side of US Highway 101 in Petaluma, which is about 20 miles south of Santa Rosa, on August 22nd. Some reports cite August 23rd, but regardless, it was 10 days later. Her body was found amongst some trees, just in Highway 101. That's a rough one because Highway 101 goes pretty much the span of the country on the West Coast. It starts at like the tip of Seattle on the northwest side and comes all the way down PCH and then branches off from Route 1 and goes all the way through California. It goes down the east side of San Jose all the way down to LA. Now, Highway 101 is one of the longest and most continuous highways in the country. You can get anywhere on that thing. So there's no telling where she was going, where she was coming from. She could have just been sitting right there on the side of the road for a long time. Like we don't know. We have no idea.
She could have hitchhiked and,
anything. The possibilities are endless. So her cause of death was strangulation, and she was found badly decomposed and with no clothes on. The fact that she was found badly decomposed means that she probably didn't live very long after she was taken.
Right. Yeah. She had been there for a while. And
she had been there for at least 5 days, judging by the decomposition.
Yeah.
The initial suspect that she was said to have left Jack in the Box with was a man who appeared to be about 25 or 30 years old. He was black with short hair, and he was about 6'4", driving a small white 4-door car. That could have been nothing.
That's anybody.
That could have been something.
Right.
She may have known him. Could have been a stranger. Could have been anybody, and that could have. That's every black man. Like that's.
Okay.
I mean,
6'4" is, not quite, but
right.
It's very generic. The white car is the same as a white tee.
Right.
Right.
Back in the 90s, every brother wanted a white car.
Everybody.
Are you kidding me? A white Honda, especially.
They all wanted a sedan or a coupe.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And a small white 4-door car. That's a small white sedan.
That was the urban video car.
Literally.
Yes.
That was a Honda Civic. That was a Honda Accord. That was a Toyota Camry. That was a Nissan. Like
the Maxima.
It was everything. It was all of the cars that you saw on the road. So, and I actually mentioned this on social media recently, that just doing this and having to diligently research these cases has brought a different type of attention to how we describe things when people go missing.
Yeah.
Right.
Like she had on blue jeans, a white shirt, and a white nylon windbreaker. Okay. Were they fitted blue jeans? Were they loose? Were they flared? Were they cropped? Were they frayed? Was the white shirt, was it a t-shirt? Was it a blouse? Was it a tank top? Did it have a Nike sign on it? Like, there's so many things that we miss, and it's unintentional. Like parents go out and buy their children's clothes, and they might say, go get that yellow shirt in your drawer. But you may not realize that yellow shirt has like a little rainbow glittery thing on the sleeve or something.
Yeah, I saw somebody had posted about her cousin being missing. And because you had talked about that, it made me more conscious. And so I responded from our account saying, okay, can you tell us her name, her weight, her height? Like, what does she wear? Because, the only thing she said was, oh, she's 14 and we missing. If anybody has any information, contact me. I was like, well, what's the number to contact you?
Right.
So you raised my consciousness on that as well. Like how bad we are with this.
Right. And then just putting together the Aisha alert, I'm thinking about, we have social media and pictures can go, all over the world. But during a time like 1997, we're just having these basic descriptions of blue jeans, white sneakers, white shirt to go off of. Right. And that could be anybody. So you get to this point where people are like, well, I'm seeing 15, 20 black girls a day that are wearing this exact same outfit. Am I supposed to call in every one of those times I see a black girl walking in this outfit?
And that's another thing I thought about, because I was talking to my dad about this, and he's been a parent for a very long time. And he, was talking about different identifying clues, like your voice. Do you have a distinctive voice? Some people have, really like high pitched voices. A girl, she might have like a more raspy voice, where if you are looking for a certain type of look and then you hear a girl with a raspy voice, that's like, that eliminates a whole lot of people who don't have a raspy voice. It's like I have a very distinct scar on my face that's sort of shaped like a teardrop. I actually went missing in a store when I was 7 because I was good for doing that. Sorry. But when they said like, yeah, she's got a teardrop shaped scar on her face, somebody saw me within like 5 minutes and was like, she's over here. She's hiding in the clothes. And it's stuff like that.
Yeah.
We don't always think about.
But you know what? I got to say this though, because, one of the reasons I came to y'all, I was like, y'all, let's do this because, I love true crime. And I listen to these all the time. That ID Network, True Crime Podcast. White people got a lot of details.
Yeah, they do.
And it's really been making me think like, is that part of why they're able to get more traction on things or move forward? Because they really come with a lot of details. They'll be like, yeah, I saw the guy. I noticed that he had a slight limp in his left leg and, there was a tatter in his right jean. I was like, how did you notice that? Right. But they have more details when they're describing a lot of these like victims or like suspects and things like that. And I'm just like, when I compare to the stories that we have,
right,
and when people go missing, it's tough. And so that, of course, the social worker in me now is like, my brain is churning and is like, okay, are we not paying enough attention to our children? Or, right.
No, absolutely.
Are we, not expecting bad things to happen despite the world that we live in? And we know how things are for Black, children and Black people, but maybe because it's Black girls, and we talked last time about the social currency, that we're just not automatically thinking the worst, and we're assuming the worst of our girls. So we're not even thinking, hey, let's collect all the information possible that we need because we may need to tell this to the police.
Right.
And that's something I'm thinking about. Like that's spinning in my head a little bit.
But also another thing to note is when we're researching, we're going off of what reporters are reporting, what police are reporting. We're not getting verbatim statements from witnesses. Yeah. We don't know if these witnesses were giving these detailed descriptions or not, and they just weren't being recorded.
And it's funny because I'm actually about to touch on something like that.
Okay, well, sorry, keep going.
No, it's fine.
Let's keep it going.
So it's funny because there was a lot of speculation around Georgia Lee Moses's her death and her disappearance, and there were reports that she lived in Petaluma. Like at the time that she was murdered, she didn't live in Petaluma. She lived in Santa Rosa. She previously lived in Petaluma. But when you slip through the cracks so much, your details get muddied. Nobody was paying attention to her, and they paid so little attention to her that they didn't even realize that she didn't live in Petaluma anymore, that she lived in Santa Rosa at that time. Wow. How do you mess up such a large part of the story? Because where you live is very important when you go missing. And it's
wild. Yeah. People didn't even realize that she moved to another city.
So when they found her, it took another few weeks to actually identify the body. And by the time the community of Petaluma had actually buried Georgia Lee, her mother and her sister had already gone to a completely different state to live with a relative. So her mother didn't even stay for that.
Was her mother fully conscious of what happened? Like, could she fully understand what happened? I know you mentioned that she had developmental disabilities.
I'm not entirely sure. Because they don't really mention what exactly her issues are. But they did say she was mentally ill and she was also developmentally challenged. So there's that could mean a lot of stuff. Also, we don't know what her mother has endured. She may have a lot of trauma issues. There was no mention of who Georgia Lee or her sister's father was. So we don't know if maybe her children
could have been living with them.
Right. Her children could have been born out of a difficult situation. She may have been abused. We don't know. We have no idea.
Right.
So, due to the lack of attention that was paid to Georgia's life and her death, the city of Petaluma actually symbolically adopted her as their own, which I didn't expect that because she was such a forgotten, slip through the cracks sort of story, that to have somebody say, well, we cared about your life even though we never really got to meet you. Like, let us take care of you now. It's better than nothing.
Yeah. Can we pause for a second though?
Sure.
Because that's weird.
It is weird.
And something about it is prickling me. It's making me feel some weird way on my skin.
Initially, that's how I felt. I was like, it felt sort of savory.
Like a fetish whatnot. Almost.
But the fact that she wasn't from Petaluma, she was from Santa Rosa, that was one thing that I was like, well, that kind of quells my concern because she wasn't actually theirs. She was Santa Rosa's. So that was one thing. And then two, the longevity of care that they provided for her memory going forward. They did not let her be forgotten.
Okay.
So a memorial featuring a metal angel sculpture that was created by 2 Petaluma firefighters was dedicated to her and placed at the site where her body was found amongst the trees on the side of Highway 101. Now, when they started doing reconstruction on the highway, they did have to move it. City workers gave them an opportunity to move it, and they have since moved it in front of City Hall.
Wow.
They didn't have to do that. Like I had to really think about this long and hard about how I felt about it. Cause at first it was like, y'all are being weird. But then I was like, okay, well, if you're willing to put forth time, effort, money, over time to take care of this child's memory, am I upset? Do I think it's weird? I think it's a little unusual. But I think that it's genuine. So they relocated the memorial to outside Petaluma City Hall. And then, inspired by the silence surrounding Georgia Lee Moses, Grammy award-winning singer Tom Waits, who is a Petaluma native, actually wrote a song about her as tribute to her memory and as an elegy to forgotten children everywhere. The song is called, the song is called Georgia Lee, and it is absolutely heart-wrenching. But I encourage everyone to give it a listen because its lyrics are evidence that stories told in whispers can still be heard and amplified. And the album that song is on actually won several Grammys the year it came out. It was from 1999, I want to say. But yeah, you can give it a listen. We have mentioned previously that Black Girl Missing focuses exclusively on missing Black girls ages 0 to 17 in the United States because their stories don't receive the media amplification that they should. But I'm going to deviate from that for one moment because a glaring example of this actually comes right from Petaluma, California. The listeners may remember in 1993, Polly Klaas, a white child, was abducted from a slumber party at her home in Petaluma.
That was Petaluma.
She was 12. She was 12 years old, just like Georgia. Do you remember her?
Yes, I remember this story. I wasn't making the connection.
Now there's a Polly Klaas Foundation that's like really huge in the recovery of abducted children and things like that. So her body was found strangled, just like Georgia's. And decomposed about 30 miles north of where Georgia Lee was found. So Georgia Lee was found in Petaluma and she was from Santa Rosa. Polly was found in Santa Rosa and she was from Petaluma. Same age, same situation. Now that case is very now the case is very significant because it sparked a lot of outrage in that area, and there were national searches for her from air, land, and sea. Winona Ryder, the actress, is a Petaluma native, and she dedicated her performance in Little Women to Polly. She donated $200,000 as a reward for someone who could bring Polly's killer to justice, and Richard Allen Davis is now sitting in San Quentin for life. But now, at the time, the search for Polly Klaas was the largest California had ever seen. Legislators quickly passed the 3 strikes law, partially as a result of Polly's murder, because Richard Allen Davis has an extremely long rap sheet.
Yes, I know that name.
Like, I mean, when I say long,
you know that name.
when I say it's long, like he started committing crimes like in the 60s and like didn't stop until the 90s when he was sent to prison for life. Like he literally is a career criminal.
Mm-hmm.
So while I'm not saying I agree with the 3 strikes law, because I absolutely don't, I understand why they would say, yes, let's pass that because she might still be alive had we, you know, had he been in jail. I understand the logic there. But that's a lot of progress for one missing child. That's a lot of
Polly was
progress.
white, right?
Polly was very, very much
I feel
white.
like we just had to say that in case people
I
were confused.
I also want to mention that Georgia Lee was a dark-skinned Black girl, and that makes a difference too, because colorism absolutely makes a difference when Black girls go missing also, and that is an inter-community problem that we need to tackle also.
Right.
But a lot of the people who were really outraged by no one even reporting Georgia Lee missing didn't even know her. But that is not the end of this.
How?
It gets
How do we have? My goodness.
it gets stranger. It gets stranger.
Oh, wow.
It gets stranger. But don't you worry, I got this.
Okay.
So police investigated Ed Pope, obviously, for Georgia Lee's disappearance and couldn't really find substantial evidence to bring him in or arrest him for possibly harming her. The younger man that she was supposedly seen with the white car, nowhere to be found. So they finally got a lead several years later in 2001. 2001, John Mark Carr.
Shut
I
up.
know. Wait.
Shut up. No.
And I'm laughing. I'm laughing because this is just wild.
No.
So John Mark Carr was investigated by Sonoma County Sheriff's Department in connection with the possible abduction and murder of Georgia Lee Moses. Police never released why they saw a connection between the two of them, but they don't investigate you for no reason. Not for something like that. Now, if you remember the name John Mark Carr, he was an elementary school teacher who was arrested in Thailand because he confessed to killing JonBenet Ramsey.
I remember that. That's why I guessed. Because I was like, that name was everywhere.
Now, that happened in 2006, 5 years after he was investigated for Georgia Lee Moses' murder. Now, DNA testing and some forensic analysis determined that he wasn't actually her killer, and it was a false confession, and he just had this fascination with the murders of JonBenet Ramsey and Polly Klaas. And the fact that he was being investigated for Georgia's murder was strange, but it didn't come out of nowhere. During that investigation, Carr had been charged with possession of pornographic material featuring children from Sonoma County. And it was during this investigation that his name sparked curiosity. So my question in my mind is, was Georgia Lee being used for that material? Like, was she being used for explicit sexual material featuring children?
Wow,
and which is really sad and really awful. But also, people who met Georgia in her neighborhood, people at her school, they all said that she looked older. Now, we know that people tend to do that to Black girls for no reason. They'll say we look older. We really don't. 12 years old, you hit puberty, your body's starting to develop. They said she looked older. I highly doubt that she looked like an adult. She was 12. But it's making me wonder the things that she could have been involved in by force.
Right. And thinking about that when, you mentioned that, like, because we still don't know what was going on in the home, right? So we don't know if this guy, Ed, was abusive. Like sometimes, children who experience, trauma and sexual trauma, physical abuse, their skin tends to age, their bodies tend to age a little bit. You know what I mean? Your body starts developing protective measures.
Right.
As a survivor of young assault myself, I started putting on a lot of weight to create a shell. My body was trying to create a shell to protect me. You know what I mean? The trauma, that's what happens. The
your
brain
body
reacts
and your brain
they
will
connect.
try to protect you.
They're going to do what they kind of do. So it's very possible that like she was just enduring things that were aging her physically. You know what I mean? So that would give people the sense. And like if she was experiencing any kind of sexual trauma, especially if she was in the like 8 or 9 range, that could affect the onset of puberty and development as well. So,
Absolutely.
so there's a couple of things that could have been happening there, but still,
For
12-year-olds
sure.
are still 12-year-olds. I was 6 feet tall at 12, and I still look like a kid.
Right.
So,
Right.
it don't matter.
So John Mark Carr was eventually found to not be a viable suspect in Georgia Lee's murder after investigating him. But to make it a little bit more of a roller coaster, John Mark Carr is now a transgender woman who goes by Alexis Reich. And she hasn't really been heard from ever since she left the spotlight several years ago after the whole JonBenet Ramsey fiasco. Yeah, I had a really hard time going over this story because she was literally forgotten and there was so many different angles that were investigated, but there still was no answers, no resolution, no nothing. Like her, just whoever killed her just is out there, free doing whatever. And she definitely fell through the cracks, and CPS knew she had trouble in the home, but because they didn't see physical proof of abuse, which doesn't really mean anything to me, nothing was ever done. And it makes me really upset to know that physical proof of abuse has to be like a broken bone or something like that. And it's, you don't know what physical abuse looks like sometimes when you're not actually looking. And if you're not coming to her home and saying how you're living is not okay, you're living with a registered sex offender in the home. Y'all couldn't have went to her home to see that. Because why would she still be in that home knowing you have a
That's not
registered sex
allowed.
offender?
Like, he would be
That's
removed
not
or she
allowed.
would be removed. The other thing you said,
No.
she's dark skinned. Bruising is not as visible on darker skin.
Correct.
And why is physical abuse like the only thing you're looking for?
Correct. So
especially at school where, changes in behavior are usually the first thing people notice outside of anything physical.
The first change of behavior was her saying, I ain't coming back.
I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
Somebody should have said, well, we're going to go to that house and check it out.
Yeah.
And
we're going to investigate.
She was reportedly a really good student and she was well behaved and all that, but she was chronically truant. The truancy alone is a huge red flag. If you're a good student and you're not coming to school, you're not coming to school because you don't want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
You clearly are enjoying what you're doing. She had friends. People liked her. She was likable. People said she was funny. They said she, liked to crack jokes and she had a great smile. Her hair was always neatly braided. She took care of her appearance as much as she could. It's not like she was some slump of nothing that she was like coming to school and she hated it. That wasn't the case at all. You allowed her to fall through these cracks because you did not care about her.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Point blank,
That's
period.
all that is.
And it's another case of like these girls, we hear this all the time.
Yeah.
Every single, I feel like every week, anything that is involving school or child protective services or anything, our girls are falling through the cracks.
Every time.
Right.
And so her mother and her sister have, they moved out of state, and then the sister was actually taken by into protective custody and given to a family member. The mother now lives in an assisted living facility in the Midwest. And Ed Pope is still alive and he still lives in Santa Rosa.
Have you seen anything about him doing anything else lately, or he hasn't been caught?
Well, he's 73 now. So no, he's just kind of living. Just there. Yeah. He still reports for his sex offender registry meetings, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I remember, they were talking about DNA testing. They didn't have any other suspects. Like, I just feel like when you brought up the poly class, right? Because I remember that, like Petaluma, for some reason, I don't remember that. But when you brought up everything about, poly class and all the ways in which people went to investigate this. So again, it's the same. It's pretty much the identical situation. And that's, to me, signals serial killer, right? And, the true crime fan that I am, I know that California is ripe for serial killers and that they're very methodical. And so, like, I'm thinking, like, was Georgia Lee targeted? And, what situation could that, what would make somebody want to harm her? You know what I mean? If it wasn't this person that saw her and they didn't follow up with that person, if it was somebody else, Like, was this all plotted? And were there more?
That's possible.
Mhm.
That's possible. That's very, and there's a lot of places in California to hide a body.
And yeah,
And
so
you're right by the highway. You can take it
you can do
anywhere.
anything,
Right.
and you in the ocean, like
You can take it to the ocean. You take it to Mexico. You can take it to anywhere.
well, whoever did this wanted her to be found because they didn't bury her, right? She was just kind of in the
Mhm.
bushes.
Right. Now, Polly
Right.
Klaas, she was buried in a shallow grave where Georgia Lee was just left amongst the trees on the side of the road. Yeah.
Mhm.
And she was strangled.
She was they were both strangled. Yeah. Yeah. And
Was
it's
there-
Polly Klaas. She came from a more affluent family
Right.
that had money. Georgia Lee, nothing.
And the thing is, Polly was taken from a slumber party.
Mhm.
Like that was the wild part. I think that got everybody was kind of like, how did you just take somebody from a slumber party? I remember the conversations around
Yeah.
that.
Like he put pillowcases over the girls' heads
And white
told
people were
them not
given
to
the
say
benefit.
nothing.
The white people were given the benefit of the doubt. Like, well, you know, it happens. No, actually,
No, it doesn't.
That doesn't happen.
never heard of that
Yeah.
happening in the Black community.
Mhm.
But you know, this is just I get why you're sad, and I get why you're like
Yeah.
upset about it, because
I feel terrible because you know she had value. She had value and she didn't even get a chance. And she fell through the cracks because nobody was looking and they don't care. They don't care. They don't care. There's no documentation. There's not enough documentation about who she was before she passed. Like it's awful. It's awful. Like I was up so late last night, like crying into a bottle of Malbec. I'm not even gonna lie.
Oh.
But because I was so upset, I just was like, this poor girl.
and this, you know, it is emotional labor, this kind of work that we're doing, and you know,
Yeah.
I'm grateful to you for this because I've never heard of this story before, you know, and I remember Polly Klaas, I remember John Mark Carr, like
Yeah.
these are names that I remember, but again, you know, and that's why we do this, right?
Mhm.
We
Actually,
do this.
one of our Facebook fans actually asked us to do this.
Oh,
I do recall. Yeah. I
shout
was
out
about
to the
bring that
Facebook
up.
fans.
Yeah, one of our Facebook fans was like, "Can you
Oh,
please
yay.
do Georgia Lee Moses?" And I was like, "Sure."
Sure.
Clap it up.
I didn't write her name down, and I apologize if she's listening. I'm really sorry, but yeah, one of our Facebook fans was like, "Can you do Georgia Lee Moses?" And I was like, "Who?" And so, I mean, I didn't know about her either, but now we do. And
So that's love, and that's the importance of our audience supporting. You know, just let us know if you know a story that you feel needs to be told. Let us know. Hit us up on Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff, and we'll look into it because we're here.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
You're welcome. That was a lot today. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's okay.
We appreciate everybody for tuning in another week. We've been getting a lot of love. People have been like, my favorite new podcast. They are like watching it. They're like casting it to their TVs. They're watching, they're listening. You know, people ain't really driving much because of the stay-at-home orders, but you know, and I know that a lot of people listen to their podcast while they're driving. I know that I do, or they listen while they're walking and running, and I know that I do. So the fact that we're limited from that and people are still listening to us, we really, really, really appreciate all of you for supporting and really amplifying and sharing when we talk about this. It means the world to us. It means the world to the girls and their memories. It means the world to their families. So thank you so much.
So, Black Girl Missing podcast is researched, written, and produced by us. It's a labor of love by 3 concerned Black women who want justice for missing Black girls. Today's episode was written by Nikki Irene and produced by the Full Service Radio team. Find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Be sure to follow us on social media, Twitter at BLK Girl Missing, Facebook at Black Girl Missing Pod, Instagram at Black Girl Missing Podcast. Visit our website for more information about each case, blackgirlmissingpod.com. Email us at blackgirlmissingpodcast@gmail.com with any tips, feedback, or names of girls you want us to look into. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode.
We love
All
y'all.
right. Everybody be safe.
Okay, social distance hug.
Yes.